The year was 1865, and the frontier was no place for softness. Wind tore across the high ridges like a blade, stripping the breath from any fool left unguarded. Clara Weston was no fool, but she'd been left unguarded all the same. Her skirts were torn near the hem, soaked in sweat and dust. Her boots, half a size too big, stolen from a corpse outside Fort McGraw, bit into her heels with every step. The trail ahead narrowed into a serpent of shale and shadow, and her hands shook with more than just fatigue. She was 8 months gone, or maybe 9, it was hard to say when time had ceased to matter. The man who'd gotten her in the state, a two-bit outlaw named Sol Weston, had lit out 3 weeks ago with a bottle and a saloon girl who couldn't even read her own name. Said he wasn't made to be no father. Said she'd slow him down. Said a lot of things before disappearing into the Red Hills beyond town and taking a last meal with him. She should have died back there. Would have, maybe, if not for the voice inside her that kept whispering, keep walking, even when the sun boiled the skin on her neck, even when her canteen ran dry, even when her belly cramped like a vice and her legs buckled beneath her. Today, the cramps had turned into something else. She knew this kind of pain. Deep, rhythmic, unforgiving. Her knees hit the dirt. A scream ripped out of her, wild and ragged. No one answered. Only the shrill whistle of wind and the crunch of rock beneath her palms. She clung to the roots of a gnarled juniper and leaned into the agony, teeth clenched against the roar building inside her. The world blurred. Pain folded her in half. She fought it, then gave in. There was no stopping what had already begun. Sweat soaked her hairline, ran down her temples. She gasped, hissed, pushed. Time melted. She didn't know how long it took, minutes or years. But then came the cry. Weak, new, piercing. She fumbled with trembling hands, bringing the child to her chest. A boy, purple and slick and screaming for the both of them. Clara collapsed backward. The child still clutched to her chest. Her breath came in broken gasps. The wind moaned through the ravine like a ghost. Above her, the sky was too blue, too endless. Her fingers were already cold. She was bleeding. Bad. The rocks beneath her darkened with each passing second. She didn't cry. There were no tears left in her. Only the kind of emptiness that came when your fight was used up. Her vision blurred at the edges. The baby quieted, sucking against her skin. She tried to hum something, some old hymn her mother used to sing back in Tennessee, but the words slipped away. Her throat was too dry. Then a sound. Not the wind. Not the birds. Hoofbeats. She couldn't lift her head, could barely roll her eyes toward the noise, but it was there, steady and deliberate, echoing against the canyon walls. A horse. The figure appeared like a shadow from legend, stepping around the bluff with the sun behind him. Tall, lean, his skin the color of copper burnished by firelight. His long black hair was braided back, one end tied with red cloth. A rifle rested across his back. He wore no hat. His eyes, dark as river stone, met hers. Clara's fingers twitched toward the rock beside her. No gun, no knife, just the child in her arms and the blood warming the earth beneath her. He said nothing. The horse snorted and pawed the ground. The rider dismounted in one smooth motion. His footsteps made no sound as he crossed the distance between them. Clara tried to speak. The word don't hovered on her lips, but never came. He crouched beside her, not reaching, just watching. The lines in his face were deep with time, but not age. He seemed still, as if the chaos of the world refused to touch him. After a moment, he looked to the baby, then back to her. His gaze held no judgment, no hunger, only a kind of quiet recognition, like he understood exactly what had happened here and what it had cost. He reached into his satchel and pulled free a water skin, uncorked it, handed it gently to her lips. Clara drank, not enough, but enough to blink back the fog crowding her vision. Then he moved with purpose. His hands, rough and brown, tore strips from the edge of his own tunic. He pressed them against her wound, slow and firm, his eyes watching hers for the flinch. She gasped but held steady. Still he said nothing. The child whimpered. The Apache looked down at the infant, then reached out, one hand beneath the tiny head, one beneath the back, and lifted him with unexpected gentleness. Clara's breath caught, but he didn't take the child far. He set him just a pace away, nestled between two warm rocks. Then he returned to her side. The bleeding slowed under his care, though Clara could feel how close she was to the edge. Her limbs were heavy. Her heart beat, like it might stop if she closed her eyes too long. "Why?" she rasped. "Why help me?" Still no answer, only that steady gaze. He moved to start a fire. The wind fought him, but he worked with patience, striking flint until a small flame crackled to life. He added dry moss, then wood. Smoke curled upward. Claire stared at him through a veil of exhaustion. Every gesture was quiet, deliberate. No wasted movement. No show of strength. He was strength. As dusk settled, the temperature dropped fast. He wrapped the child in a buckskin blanket from his saddlebag. Then he laid another across her legs. The fire grew, its light dancing along the canyon walls, painting shadows behind him like ancient spirits. He sat cross-legged nearby, close but not touching. And then he spoke, low and certain. "Dakota." It took her a moment to understand. "That your name?" A nod. She coughed a laugh. "I'm Clara. Weston. I guess." He nodded again. The silence returned, but it wasn't cold anymore. It held a strange comfort, like the hush before a storm, heavy with meaning. Clara closed her eyes. Not from fear. Not anymore. She'd been alone when her child came into the world. Alone when the blood soaked through her dress. Alone when the sun beat down without mercy. But now she wasn't alone, and that in a land where mercy came rare and late was more than she dared to pray for. Morning came slow over the canyon, spilling gold over the rocks and painting the sky in shades too soft for the land beneath it. Clara stirred to the smell of smoke and something savory, a thin strip of meat sizzling on a flat stone by the fire. Her body ached, raw and bruised and hollowed out, but the pain was dulled by warmth and the faint, steady breath of her child nestled against her. She blinked toward the fire and saw him again, the Apache, Dakota. He sat as before, legs folded beneath him, his back straight as a pine. His eyes met hers, and in them was no demand, no pity, only the same quiet that had followed him since he stepped from the ridge like some ghost sent by the mountain. She tried to sit up. Pain bloomed in her belly, sharp and mean. "Easy," she whispered to herself, more prayer than instruction. The child stirred. She laid a hand over his back and winced as her fingers trembled. She hadn't realized how cold the night had been until the fire warmed her bones. Dakota offered no words. He didn't have to. His movements spoke. He handed her a piece of dried venison, gestured toward a canteen. She took both with shaky hands. "Thank you," she said, because it felt wrong not to. He nodded once, then returned his attention to the flames. They didn't speak for hours. The silence stretched, not tense but careful, like a bridge newly built over a gorge neither had yet crossed. The boy slept, wrapped in buckskin, and Clara kept her hand on him the whole time, half afraid she might wake and find it all had been some dying dream. She studied Dakota from the corner of her eye. His movements were deliberate. When he sharpened his knife, he did so slowly, as if every stroke was a thought. When he packed his gear, it was with the discipline of someone who never expected to stay long in one place. "What are you doing out here?" she finally asked, voice hoarse. He looked at her, thought a moment, following sky. She frowned. "You mean the stars?" His eyes held hers. "My brother died in spring. I walk where he walked, sit where he sat. I carry his silence." Clara felt a chill, and not from the wind. The way he said it, it wasn't just grief. It was a vow, a man shaped by loss, just as she had been. They were strangers, but not unfamiliar. She pulled her coat tighter around her. "He was your only kin?" Dakota didn't answer right away. Then, "No, but the only one I still hear." She looked down at the fire. "I had a sister once. Died of fever. My ma passed 2 winters after. Pa took his own life with a shotgun and no note." The fire cracked. Then there was Saul. Her lip curled. He was alive but hollow. I should have known better. You loved him, Dakota said simply. She flinched at the truth in it. I thought I did. I think I loved the idea of someone staying. That's all. Dakota's eyes dropped to the child. You stay for him now. She nodded. He's the only reason I didn't lay down and let the coyotes take me. Dakota rose and kicked dirt over the fire. We go. You can walk. Far as I have to. He offered her a long branch for support. She stood, swaying, teeth clenched against the sting in her hips. She held the baby close with one arm, gripped the branch with the other. They moved slow, east through the dry wash. The sun climbed, the ground cracked and crunched beneath their boots. Dakota led with careful steps, watching for signs, snakes, water, anything useful. Clara followed, every step a small triumph. By midday, the trail split into a narrow ridge. Below, a river curled like a silver ribbon. Dakota knelt at the edge, eyeing the distance. We cross, he said. Clara looked at the river. It wasn't wide, but it was fast, snow melt, judging by the sound. Her legs shook. I don't know if I can. He didn't pressure her, just started down the slope, carving a path with his boots. She followed, jaw tight, baby strapped against her chest with her shawl. At the riverbank, he tested the current. Water rushed around his calves, tugging at his legs. He nodded once, then offered her his hand. I've got him, she said, clutching the baby tighter. He didn't argue, just placed one hand on her waist, the other on her elbow, guiding her in. The water was ice. It bit through her boots, her dress, her resolve. She gasped, teeth chattering. Keep moving, Dakota said, low and steady. Halfway across, her foot slipped on a mossy stone. Her knee buckled. She lurched forward, and the baby screamed. Then her world turned sideways. The child was ripped from her arms by the current. She screamed, lunged, but the river pulled him faster than her legs could move. No, no, God, no. Dakota dove, a blur of motion, his body slicing into the river like a spear. He disappeared beneath the water. Clara scrambled, frantic, half crawling, half swimming downstream. Her arms burned. Her voice cracked. Then there, a shape rising from the water, soaked and gasping, one arm clutching the crying child above the surface. Dakota waded back toward her, face grim. He handed her the boy without a word. Clara dropped to her knees in the shallows, sobbing with the baby against her chest. She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, just clutched the child like a lifeline. Dakota sank onto a rock, pulling off his wet shirt and wringing it out. His body bore scars, thin white lines across his ribs, one thicker wound along his side. You saved him, she whispered. He looked up, breathing hard. He matters. She stared at him. The weight of those two words hit her like a blow. So few men had ever said that about anything that couldn't shoot or drink or steal. They built another fire by the river, dried what they could. That night, Clara fed her child under the stars while Dakota tended to his knife, sharpening the edge against a smooth stone. He has no name yet, she said. Dakota glanced up. In my tongue we wait. The name finds him. She nodded slowly. I like that. He leaned back against a tree. You stay with me. Until he walks. Or you find others. She studied his face in the firelight. It held no romance, no seduction. Just offer. Shelter. Strength. I don't want charity, she said. It's not charity, he replied. It's what's right. She hesitated, then leaned her head against her pack. The fire popped. The baby stirred in his sleep. For the first time in weeks, Clara felt something deep inside her begin to thaw. Not just from the fire, but from the quiet strength he shared with her. The sky had turned to ash, smeared with the smoke of distant campfires and the promise of cold. For 3 days, Clara, Dakota, and the baby had moved north through unforgiving country, dry gulches, thorn mesquite, vulture skies. The boy, stronger now, no longer cried at night. He stared with wide, knowing eyes as if he, too, understood the peril that chased them like a shadow stretching longer each day. They hadn't spoken much since the river. Words felt too small for what they carried. Clara had begun to trust the rhythm of Dakota's silence. His gestures spoke clearer than any promise ever had. how he handed her food before eating himself, how he kept the child in the crook of his arm when she needed to rest, how he never walked ahead more than a dozen paces, always within reach if the trail turned cruel. But danger didn't always howl before it struck. By dusk, they reached a narrow basin where scrub oaks bent low against the wind. Dakota paused, scanning the ridgeline. Clara squinted. "What is it?" He said nothing at first. Then dust. Horses. 4. Maybe 5. Her stomach turned cold. Could be traitors. Dakota's jaw twitched. Could be worse. They moved fast, no fire that night, no rest. Clara's muscles screamed, but fear outran pain. She knew who might be behind them. Saul Weston didn't leave threads hanging. If word had reached him she'd survived, he'd ride to finish the job. Not for her, but for the child. The boy who could one day bear his name in court or church. She had whispered once to Dakota, voice barely audible, asterisk, he wouldn't let any seed of his live unless he could own it. Asterisk, now she clutched that child tighter with every step. They reached a bluff at dawn, wind cutting hard across the edge. Below, a thin creek glimmered, and beyond it, smoke. A settlement. Maybe 6 cabins, maybe 10. White folks, Dakota muttered. Clara's lips parted. Could be safety. Could be questions. Wrong ones. Still, it was a chance. She looked down at the boy in her arms. He deserved more than sagebrush and silence. He deserved warmth. A roof. But they had no time to debate. The hoofbeats came fast. They thundered in from the west. 5 riders, 3 of them armed, all white men with worn hats and cruelty slashed across their mouths. Saul rode in front. He pulled up his horse with a sharp jerk, spitting in the dirt. Well, ain't this a pretty picture? Clara stepped back, shielding the child. You've got no place here, Saul. He grinned. Neither do you. You think crawling off to die absolves you of debts? Dakota stepped forward. Saul's eyes narrowed. And who's this? New man, is it? Real gallant. Looks like he don't speak much. He speaks enough, Clara said. Enough to know your filth. One of the men beside Saul raised his rifle lazily. You sure you want to mouth off with that baby in your arms, darling? Dakota didn't wait. He moved like lightning, sliding his knife from his belt and hurling it. The blade hit the man's shoulder, hard enough to knock him sideways from his saddle. Chaos broke. Gunfire erupted, sharp and mean. Clara ducked, clutching the baby, heart pounding so loud she could barely hear herself scream. Dakota tackled her behind a low rock outcrop, bullets ricocheting overhead. He returned fire with a single-shot rifle. 1 round, 1 scream. Stay down, he barked. But Clara wasn't helpless anymore. She waited for the lull between volleys, then scooped a handful of gravel and hurled it at the horse of the nearest rider. The animal reared, panicked. The rider tumbled, gun flying from his hand. Dakota seized the moment, charging the downed man. 2 punches, a kick, and the fight was over. Saul fired wildly, cursing, spittle flying. He dismounted and advanced on Clara, pistol shaking in his hand. You think this ends with you walking free? He snarled. You think that half-breed baby changes who you are? Clara stood slowly. You're right. It doesn't change who I am. But it damn sure showed me who you are. He raised the gun. Dakota was faster. He lunged shoulder first, sending Saul sprawling. The pistol fired wide. Dakota landed hard punches, one after another. But Saul was mean, desperate. He pulled a knife and slashed across Dakota's side. Claire screamed. The baby wailed. Dakota grunted, blood blooming across his shirt. Clara snatched the fallen pistol. Saul turned to her, laughing. You gonna shoot me? You ain't got it in you, Clara. But her hand was steady. I was alone when I gave birth on a bed of rocks. I walked bleeding through God's own hell. I watched this man risk his life to save our son. So, you tell me, what part of me looks soft now? Saul charged. She fired. The bullet caught him square in the chest. He fell forward like a felled tree, dead before he hit the ground. Silence swallowed the canyon. The other 2 riders fled, terrified, leaving their wounded behind. Dakota collapsed against a rock, breathing heavy, eyes half-lidded. Clara dropped beside him, hands flying as wound. You're not dying. Not now. Not after everything. He winced. It's a shallow. I've had worse. You're a terrible liar. He managed a weak smile. Clara pressed her forehead to his. You stayed, even when I had nothing to give. His voice was low. You gave everything. Later, they approached the settlement not as ghosts or fugitives, but as survivors. A kind-eyed woman came running from one of the cabins, gasped at the blood, at the child, at Clara's face. Are you safe? The woman asked. Clara looked at Dakota, then down at the baby. For the first time, she whispered, I think we are. As the sun dipped behind the hills, Clara stood outside the cabin door, the boy in her arms. Behind her, Dakota sat by the hearth, bandaged but upright. She looked out over the ridges, remembering the trail, the pain, the firelight. Her voice was quiet. They say, the frontier tests what you're made of. I say it reveals what you already are. She turned, stepped inside, and closed the door. And just like that, the wilderness had lost 2 more souls to something stronger than survival. It had lost them to love.